Greg Peterson here, and I want to thank you for listening to the Urban Farm Podcast. We wouldn't be able to keep doing these great shows without you. So as a token of my appreciation, I'd like to offer you access to a list of our top 10 episodes I personally find most inspiring. If you enjoy the Urban Farm Podcast but don't have time to listen to every one, then you will love this list. Although all our guests have great information to offer, if you are short on time, these 10 are must-listens. To get access to the top 10 most inspiring podcast episodes, text FARMER to 44222. That's FARMER to 44222. And enjoy listening.
You're listening to the Urban Farm Podcast, your partner in the grow your own food revolution. Whether you've just been introduced to urban farming or you're a lifelong advocate, we're sure you'll leave feeling more informed, equipped, and empowered to dig deeper into the soil of your local food economy. With you every step of the way, here's your host, Greg Peterson.
Today on the Urban Farm Podcast, we have Brian Smith to talk about his experience with Biochar. Brian is a systems engineer and project manager living in North Phoenix. For the past 30 years, he has worked for GE, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Honeywell on software for flight control systems in commercial and military aircraft. Recently, he became an entrepreneur and started a small software development company. To balance his high-tech career, he has enjoyed more simple hobbies like making beer, woodworking, and organic gardening. Yay! During the Great Recession, he purchased a foreclosed property that had been neglected and abused for many years, and he has spent the last 8 years renovating both the indoors and outdoors. After removing 5 layers of different landscape stone that the previous owners had covered the yard with, he spread several inches of arborist wood chips over the dirt to reduce water loss and increase soil fertility. In the backyard, he converted a broken-down diving pool into a private aquifer by filling it with rock and gravel, connecting a pump to the drain pipe and covering it with topsoil. He now has several fruit trees and a veggie garden growing on top of 3,000 to 4,000 gallons of secure rainwater. How cool is that? Welcome to the show today, Brian.
Thank you. Very glad to be here.
Absolutely. So I shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share more about the path you took to get where you're at now?
Yes. Well, I moved here to the Phoenix area from Fort Worth, Texas, to get a job at Honeywell.
Uh-huh.
And at the time, having sold a house there, I was in an apartment for quite a while. And finally, after the recession, I bought a renovated home fairly close to the Honeywell plant in North Phoenix. It was unlivable, and it was a challenge. So my wife, it had to put a new roof on it. Ceilings had fallen in. Kitchen needed to be replaced. Floors needed to be replaced.
Wow.
I did so, took my time and enjoyed it. And a big part of it was the outdoors. It was bare dirt in the front yard, and it was a weedy, stony backyard with a broken down pool. And I did a lot of shoveling. I did a lot of sifting stone and sand, a lot of digging and wheelbarrowing stuff around. But it was all worth it. Took me about two to 3 years. Built a block wall around it, and as you mentioned, filled in the pool. People couldn't quite figure out what I was doing with
nice
4 dump trucks of large rock that I had delivered on site, and wheeled them into the backyard, filled up the pool, and now I've got all that nice, clean, fresh water down there. I can pump it out.
Nice.
So
kind of like a wicking pad, is it not?
Yeah, sort of. For the trees I've planted around it, I do know that they've gone down and found the water with the roots. For the veggies, I use drip irrigation. Yeah. So I can collect that water, but also I've run my gutters down into some gravel channels.
Yeah.
So when it rains, I pick up about a quarter of my roof space goes down directly
Mm-hmm.
down in, and so about an inch of rain gives me 1,000 gallons down there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So,
So,
and you've been experimenting with this thing, and I've been wondering what it is. It's called biochar, and I have a quick story to tell you. So, Heidi, my sweetheart, says to me last night, I was sharing with her that I was going to be talking with you about biochar, and she said, "Greg, what is biochar?" And I said, "Well, that's a good question. I think it's something that you burn, and when you're done with it, it's really good fertilizer. But that's about what I know about what it is. So can you share with us what biochar is?"
yeah, let me correct that a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Burning wood and that is charcoal, and biochar goes beyond that. A technical definition could be it's bioactive pyrogenic carbon as a soil amendment. By pyrogenic, I mean it's created from fire,
Right.
and that, but is bioactive. So we infuse it with nutrients that fungus and microbes can grow on it. The charcoal is a lattice structure. It
Uh-huh.
absorbs water
Uh-huh.
and organic chemicals, and then the bacteria and fungus grow on it that you need in your soil web cycle, your
Mm-hmm.
soil cycle.
Right.
And it's different than carbon that you add in compost. Compost will rot and decompose over time,
Right.
and so you're constantly adding compost. But the charcoal doesn't decompose in the sun, and it doesn't go away. It pretty much stays in the soil almost forever.
Uh-huh.
There, to get into the history of it a little bit.
Please.
So I've been doing research on this for the past 4 or 5 years, and there's a YouTube video out there called "The Secret of El Dorado." It's called Terra Preta, and Terra Preta is where this originally started. It means dark earth in Portuguese.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Amazon, they found places that had such black dirt, you could dig it up and use it for fertilizer. And that's in the Amazon, where
Uh-huh.
everybody knows they burn the trees down in order to get ash in the soil,
Right.
and then it's exhausted. I mean, that's why they're destroying so much forest. But at the same time, there's all these really rich places. And so they've done the research on it and tried to figure out what that is. Now, if you go out and looking up biochar, there's a lot of articles out there, and most of them are on how to make it, how to burn charcoal and what to do with it. You till it into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to add compost or something like that to it. Their biochar is found mostly in the Amazon, but they've discovered it in a few places in other parts of the world. There are some places in sub-Saharan Africa. Just recently, they talk about how it's been used over there in a National Geographic article. The Great Plains of North America. You look at this huge area in the center of our country
Mm-hmm.
that is so fertile, and it's because there were grass fires going over for 10,000 years,
Right.
since the last ice ages. And those grass fires would go across so fast that they wouldn't burn completely, and they drop charcoal. And year after year after year, you drop tiny bits of charcoal that work their way down into the ground.
Mm.
And the dirt, you go into Kansas and Iowa and all these places, and the soil is black.
Mm.
And that black
Mhm.
is carbon, and that's where it comes from.
Interesting.
Yeah. So in academia, the various agricultural colleges have come across this in the mid 90s. They've been doing research. You need as little as 5% by volume of this carbon in the soil to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Some people put a lot more. I've been using it for about 4 years now. I had an eggplant with a couple dozen fruit. I just harvested a spaghetti squash a couple weeks ago. I had 15 squashes off of one plant.
Wow.
I mean, and these were all big squashes,
Mm-hmm.
the kind you buy in the store. It's amazing. It works in both tropical and desert areas.
Mm-hmm.
It was discovered in the tropics, but it worked, and it's good there because it absorbs water and
Right.
it holds the water. But it's also very good here in the desert because when it absorbs the water, it doesn't let things leach out, and it releases the water slowly,
Mm-hmm.
and then it builds that soil food web that is so deficient in our valley soils.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like biochar probably has a lot of micronutrients in it that release over time.
It does, and those micronutrients are essential
Mm-hmm.
to growing. You've heard of a food web,
Oh, yes.
you have your grazers eating grass, and the predators eat the grazers, and
Mm-hmm.
and then the scavenger eat. Okay, so that same cycle takes place underground. Plants use
Ah.
photosynthesis to create sugar, and 50% of the sugar in a plant leaches into the soil. And that sugar feeds microbes and fungus, which use the sugar to create acids and etch minerals off the sand and the
Mhm.
rocks and the soil, and then make that into something that's soluble for the plants. So you have that cycle of
Right.
plants feeding the fungus. And what we do with biochar is give a place for those fungus
Mm-hmm.
and microbes, give them a place to live,
Yeah.
and give them a place to put their food, essentially.
Yeah.
And there's so much microscopic space in the matrix of charcoal that it's just, you get a lot of growth there.
Yeah.
So, and that's part of the chemical processes of it.
Yeah. So, how did you discover biochar, and how long have you been using it in gardening, and what effects have you seen?
Okay. I actually discovered it. It was mentioned in the Valley Permaculture Association. They have a forum, online forum.
Uh-huh.
That association, they've changed a little bit, and they don't maintain that website anymore. But that was the first time I heard the word. So I went out and started doing some research on it.
Uh-huh.
And some people would say, well, what's the difference between biochar and charcoal? And
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah. And the difference is that biochar is charcoal that's bioactive.
Oh, right.
It
You said that.
actually lets things grow, and it stays in the soil. Once you put it in, it's there forever.
Mm-hmm.
It'll last in the Amazon 3,000 years.
Yeah.
So what I do is I use compost tea. And for those people who have been on the website and pretty much any organic gardening forum
Mhm.
talks about making compost tea. And there's a lot of different ways to make it. I do it simple. I just throw my compost in and maybe add a teaspoon of sugar or something. But there's a lot of different ways to do it.
Uh-huh.
Once you have the compost tea, I pour it over the charcoal and let it soak in. Doesn't take long, a couple hours, 24 hours.
Mhm.
And then I have it. It's all done. It's ready. I can throw that in. If it's wet, I can let it dry out. It's ready to use. One other thing I do, though, is I add mycorrhizae, which is fungus spores.
Yes.
It's a commercial. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I like the Great White product. You can get that. You can buy that, and just a little. It's a quarter teaspoon of powder you
Right.
put in, and I've added fungus already. I don't even have to wait for the plants. Wait for it to get into the ground.
Yeah. Interesting. I just today I had a 40-pound bag of mycorrhiza arrive here at the house. So,
Oh,
yeah, I've had this experience recently. This friend of mine, Jake Mace, he's the vegan athlete. He has been, for the past year and a half or 2 years, he's been adding mycorrhiza and rock dust, azomite rock dust into his gardens. And when I was over there 2 months ago, it was amazing how things were thriving. So this whole notion of feeding the soil is so incredibly important.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. The amazing thing about the biochar to me is that you do it once and it's there forever.
Yeah.
And this is what I call an infrastructure type thing.
Yes.
It's like, it's like the water pipes underground,
right?
And the electric conduits underground. It's something you don't see, but if you take the time and you put it down there, it really, in a civilized society, it's what makes a difference between a first world country and a third world country. Okay?
Yeah.
It's the things that are hidden. It's the roads. Well, roads aren't hidden, but your roads and your sewage lines and your electrical lines and your gas lines and everything that make the civilization work.
Yeah.
In the same way, I believe that biochar, this charcoal buried in the soil to enhance the productivity, is going to make the difference in our world, because we're seeing a climate change.
Oh, yeah.
We're seeing a change where carbon dioxide in the air is affecting things. It's a pound of charcoal has 2 pounds of carbon dioxide in it.
Wow.
If you, on a molecular basis.
Yeah.
If you bury a pound of charcoal, you've just taken 2 pounds of carbon dioxide out of the air, which won't return in our lifetime, won't maybe not return for 3,000 or 4,000 years.
Yeah.
And as we start putting that in the desert soils and soils around the world, it's going to make a difference for generations to come.
So how can we make this? Well,
the simple way, and the way I've been making it for the last 3 or 4 years, is I go out and have a campfire in my backyard. And my wife brings over a little bit of wine, and I have my beer, and we sit down with a little bit of crackers, and it's a tough process, but somebody's got to do it.
No kidding. All right. So hold on here. You're telling me you burn some wood in your barbecue in your backyard.
Yes. And what I do, I burn it and I wait for pretty much the yellow flame to go out. It takes me 15 minutes. I'll watch it. And when the yellow flame goes away, now you know that the wood gas is gone and all that's left is carbon. I go over with a pair of tongs, pick it up and drop it in a bucket of water. It quenches it instantly, and the water going in shocks the charcoal and expands it. It's a
oh wow.
Yeah, it actually it's like it's a steaming process that they use. But
sounds spectacular to me. Really, that explosion when you dunk it in water. All right.
And that's you can't really see that, but it's on a microscopic physical level. It opens up the pores, and so that the nutrients can then go in.
Right.
It'll take me, I can fill up a 5-gallon bucket of pieces of charcoal in about an hour and a half to 2 hours of burning. So I go through a fair amount of just ordinary firewood.
Yeah.
Then what I do is I will lay it out on the ground and let it dry for 2 days, and then I drop it into my Toro leaf blower. Actually, I find that's a really simple way. You can do other things. You can put it in a bag and crush it. For a long time, I used like a mortar and pestle with a stone in that. You basically want to crush it up so it'll go through a 1/2-inch hardware cloth
Okay.
to strain it out. You don't want large chunks. You don't want really fine stuff, because if you're working with it and you let it dry out too much, that charcoal dust just flies everywhere.
Yeah.
So keep it damp in that. And then I just pour my compost tea over it. Now, that's what I've been doing. It's really simple. It's a backyard process. Anybody can do it. There are a couple other ways. The way that they've been using for thousands of years is you dig a cone-shaped hole in the ground, and you start a fire in the bottom, and you lay wood on it. As that wood starts to burn and is burning well, you lay another 6 to 8 inches on top of that. So you're covering up the wood below, and the wood on top is starting to burn. And you keep burning layers and layers and layers until you get up to the top. And then you cover the whole thing over with dirt, 4 or 5 inches of dirt. And what that does is, as the burning comes up, it smothers the bottom, but the bottom is hot, and it continues to burn in the absence of oxygen. So without the oxygen, you're not going to turn into ash.
Right.
And when you cover the top over, then again you eliminate the oxygen, and that whole pile will turn to charcoal. You wait 2 days and dig down in it, and you've got a whole pile of charcoal. That's a lot of the ways. Either you build an underground kiln like that,
right,
or you build a stove on top. And you can go out and look at this in there's 40 or 50 different videos on YouTube on how to do this.
How to make it, yeah.
How to make it. The neat way to do it, which is really a high-tech way, it's called a T-LUD, top lit updraft. And what that is, you poke holes in the bottom of a 55-gallon drum, you put wood chips on top, and you light it from the top, and it burns down. So as the line of ignition moves down, okay, as it burns down, the combustion, that burns up all the oxygen, and there's no oxygen left. Nothing left on top, so the top isn't burning to ash. And you burn all the way down to the bottom of the barrel. And when you get to the bottom, then you have to smother it. Then you move it off so no air comes through the holes, and you put something on top. And you've got charcoal right there. The only thing left to do is infuse it with nutrients with compost tea or compost.
I was going to say, you got to activate it.
Yes, you got to activate it. You got to put the nutrients in it. The neat thing about that is there's very little smoke, because there's no combustion. And you can go out and look at this. There's 2 really good videos. One called Making Biochar for Small Farms by John Rogers, and the other one is Biochar for Cook Stoves with Chris Farmer. And both of those are very good videos. And if those come up on your screen, you're going to see another 10 or 15 more videos that you can look at.
Yeah.
That's for if you want to make, 50 to 100 pounds of charcoal at a time, if you're really going to it.
Well, and if you have a big garden, that could easily be done, huh?
That could. And I do know that there are some places that sell it online. You can.
That was going to be the next question for you. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it runs about $25 to $30 a cubic foot.
Oh.
But there's only a couple places that I found that have sold it, and they run out real quickly. So you'd have to look at that. In my mind, it's easy to make.
Yeah, I was going to say we just need to get over that. We need to get it from somebody else and just make it. Dang it.
Yes. If a whole bunch of people are starting to make it, then everybody's contributing. Right. And as an industrial process, I know that there are a lot of cities that burn the wood.
Right.
When trees are cut in the cities. Gainesville is well known. Gainesville, Florida. is well known for it's called I think it's City of Trees is its nickname, but they actually have a large city electric plant that is run off of wood.
Oh, interesting.
Pyrolysis.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think they save the charcoal. I think they burn it to ash. And if they could start putting it into the ground on an industrial basis, I think it would be a really good thing. But they haven't started doing that.
Yeah. Wow, this is really interesting. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's has been lost.
Yeah.
Over it. There's nothing new under the sun. The human race has discovered a lot of things and forgotten a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you use it in gardening and with fruit trees? You just, when you're planting, you just spread some in the space and be on your merry way?
There's a couple different ways. One is if you have enough of it, you spread it over the ground, say about two anywhere from 1 inch to 2 inches thick, and just till it in.
Wow.
What I've done is, because it took a while to make it and it took me time, I start out with digging my starts. My tomato plants, my peppers, my eggplant, things like that. I'll take about a quart of it, and I'll dig a hole down and stir it up with the compost and put my start in it. And if I do that every year and just move them around a little bit, after 4 or 5 years, the entire garden has it. Wow. If you're planting a tree or something, I'll use more. I'll use probably about a gallon to a gallon and a half. And if you normally dig a 2 to 3 foot diameter hole, nice and wide for that tree, the way they suggest, you just put it in and stir it around with some compost, and then fill it in. And it really makes a big difference. Wow. I have a mandarin orange tree I bought from Costco about 5 years ago, and I planted it. And right now it's about 3 foot high, and I think there's about 12 oranges on it this year.
Wow, nice.
And in the backyard, I planted a second one the following year from Costco, mandarin orange tree, identical. I put biochar on it, and it is now 8 feet tall. Wow. And I'm going to get about a gallon of oranges. You can see, I mean, there's one is more than twice as big than the other. It's just amazing. Wow, cool. Just amazing.
Cool. Well, thanks for that. And I'm going to shift on you, and I'd like for you to talk about a time you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what you might have learned from it.
I would have to say my biggest failure in this area has been my first 3 years of veggie gardening in Phoenix. They were absolute disasters. Starting out planting carrots and spinach in April just doesn't work.
Oops.
Yeah. So the way I overcame that is, after I just saw that nothing's growing and what did grow got burned out, I started asking people for help.
Good.
And very fortunately, I was able to discover the Valley Permaculture Association, and started looking around and discovering got planted different times and different ways in that, because I had come from the Seattle area, and very, very different types.
Oh, that is the case.
So I would, when you fail, someone else out there is successful at doing this in some way. Find those people, and that's probably what I've done.
Perfect. Yeah. What do you consider your biggest success?
My biggest success at this point in gardening has been the discovery of biochar. Mm-hmm. It has just been amazing, to the extent that, from time to time I would use pesticides and various things when the bugs come along, and I'd lose half my crop or so. Now I get so much out of my garden that doesn't even bother me anymore.
Nice.
I mean, let the bugs, let the caterpillars and everything have their fair share, because it is so productive that I can take whatever I need off of it there's still fruit left, throw that back in the compost and just recycle everything.
Yeah.
It just doesn't bother me anymore to lose plants to bugs and insects.
Yeah. Nice. So what drives you?
What drives me? I discover my passions and what engages me and I can get excited about. I mean, whether it's, I've raised 4 kids and I'm proud of what they do and they engage me all the time. I've been a sailor. I've sailed. I've worked with wood. I make wine and beer. I've been elected to public office. I renovated my house. All these various things, it's the doing, it's the accomplishment. And when you can see that when I see that, that's what engages me. And so I'm more of a doer than a talker, I think.
Yeah.
I love to talk though, but I really like.
Let's get out and do something.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, cool. So I'm all about education, and I have to know, where do you go for your learning?
I go to the internet.
Yeah.
It used to be books, but now, you're 2 or 3 clicks away from do it yourself or a forum or YouTube or whatever. There is so much information out there that, hey, if I have something is broken off in the house and I need to repair it, first thing I do is, unless I've done it before, I go out to the internet.
Yeah.
Go out and find the user manuals online.
Right, exactly.
There's so much. Gardening, everybody loves to share about what they've done and what they've done well. And it's out there for you.
Perfect. So what one final piece of advice do you have for our listeners?
My favorite quote is from Stephen Covey. Begin with the end in mind. Know what you want to do. You don't necessarily know how to get there, but you know what you want. So begin with the end in mind. And as long as you remember that, you work your way through life, and you'll get there.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show and sharing your experience with us today, Brian. It has been a treat getting to chat with you.
Thank you. This was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if our listeners wanted to get a hold of you?
They could get a hold of me at BD, for Brian Douglas, Smith, bdsmith54@gmail.com. Don't have a website, but if you write me and ask for advice on biochar or anything like that, I'll give you my 2 cents.
All right, perfect. You can find show notes from today's podcast at urbanfarm.org/biochar. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast. Greg Peterson here, and I want to thank you for listening to the Urban Farm Podcast. We wouldn't be able to keep doing these great shows without you. So as a token of my appreciation, I'd like to offer you access to a list of our top 10 episodes I personally find most inspiring. If you enjoy the Urban Farm Podcast but don't have time to listen to every one, then you will love this list. Although all our guests have great information to offer, if you are short on time, these 10 are must-listens. To get access to the top 10 most inspiring podcast episodes, text FARMER to 44222. That's FARMER to 44222. And enjoy listening.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen 3 days a week for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.